Trump just cut off Cuba's oil supply completely. Every country selling petroleum to Havana now faces crippling tariffs. Venezuela's Maduro captured Russia's shipments, halted. Cuba's peso collapsed 10% in 3 weeks. But this isn't about punishing communism. It's about 4 Chinese spy bases, 90 miles from Florida, listening to everything. Washington has exactly one play left: starve the regime until it collapses, then race China to either seize or destroy the most sophisticated surveillance network ever built in America's backyard. 11,000 U.S. troops already surged to the region. Beijing's calculating evacuation timeline. Moscow deployed nuclear submarines as a warning. This is February 2026. The countdown's already started. If Cuba's regime collapses, China faces a critical decision: evacuate intelligence assets or implement scorched earth protocols and destroy everything. Washington prepares teams to recover intact databases. Beijing calculates airlift capacity. Moscow signals with nuclear submarines. Cuban military commanders face a choice: facilitate Chinese evacuation or cooperate with U.S. seizure operations. The Lord's Protocol: the race to secure or destroy surveillance infrastructure before it changes hands. Start with Bejucal, the largest active Cuban signal intelligence complex documented by satellite analysis. Senator Marco Rubio called publicly to kick out this Chinese listening station during 2016 presidential debates. April 2025. Analysts documented construction of a new circularly disposed antenna array. 19 antennas arranged in a circle 175 meters in diameter. CDAAs are specialized signal intelligence collection tools for high-frequency direction finding, pinpointing radio signals from 3,000 to 8,000 miles away. Bejucal's new CDAA monitors air and maritime activity across U.S. territory, tracking signals from Florida military installations 90 miles north. Near El Salo, CSIs found a large CDAA under construction beginning 2021. Projected diameter 130 to 200 meters. Once completed, this facility will monitor U.S. Navy operations throughout the Caribbean and potentially the South Atlantic. YJ grew from a single antenna in 2002 to 12 antennas by 2025, plus a solar farm as insurance against Cuba's unreliable grid. Calabazar hosts a dozen dish antennas, the newest installed 2016, indicating continued modernization. 4 facilities, less than 100 miles south of Florida. Cuba commands approaches to the Panama Canal, Caribbean Sea lanes, South Atlantic routes, and overlooks approximately 20 key Florida military installations. Cape Canaveral Kennedy Space Center, Central Command, Southern Command, multiple submarine and military bases. What satellite imagery confirms: 175 meters diameter equals precision tracking at 3,000 to 8,000 miles. Multiple antenna types across 4 facilities equals complex signal intelligence mission covering satellite downlinks, radio traffic, commercial communications. The Soviets established LORDS in 1964, 2 years after the Cuban Missile Crisis nearly triggered nuclear war. For 37 years, LORDS monitored all U.S. military and civilian satellites, intercepted White House communications, NASA telemetry, financial wire services. Raul Castro claimed Russia obtained 75% of its military strategic information from LORDS. Putin announced LORDS closure in October 2001. Dismantling began January 2002, completed by month's end. 3 Antonov 124 cargo aircraft dispatched to return equipment to Russia. Timeline: approximately 30 days total. Then came the gap. For 12 years, no Russian presence at LORDS until July 2014, when Moscow and Havana reached agreement to reopen. Russia forgave 90% of Cuba's $32 billion debt. The Soviets built LORDS, operated it 37 years, evacuated in 30 days, came back 13 years later. Now, China's built for facilities with technical capabilities surpassing Cold War architecture. June 2023. Wall Street Journal reported China invested heavily in cash-strapped Cuba in exchange for signal intelligence facility access. Biden administration confirmed Chinese operatives had operated an intelligence facility upgraded in 2019. This fits Project 141, classified military logistics support network, aiming for at least 5 overseas bases by 2030. Cuba's facilities provide unique capability unavailable from Chinese territory. Collecting data on U.S. rocket launches provides privileged insight into flight paths and telemetry as China works to catch up to American space launch technology. Capability to intercept data delivered by U.S. satellites passing over highly sensitive military sites across southern United States. Intercepting commercial communications provides access to unencrypted commercial data, less restricted by encryption than military communications. Cuban installations close China's strategic gap in North America, increasingly significant as China expands satellite constellation. Huawei and ZTE, both blacklisted by U.S. government over espionage risks, now form backbone of Cuba's telecommunications infrastructure. China's 2017 national intelligence law requires even private firms to cooperate with state intelligence efforts. Cuba's dire economic circumstances create conditions where Beijing leverages infrastructure to support signal intelligence collection. June 12, 2024. Nuclear-powered submarine Kazan arrived Havana Harbor. First formal Russian nuclear submarine visit to Cuba since 1991. Kazan carries 32 Onyx anti-ship missiles, or 40 caliber cruise missiles, long-range land attack capability against targets across U.S. territory. June 13, 2024. USS Helena arrived Guantanamo Bay. Unusual decision to disclose submarine movement. Direct confrontation between U.S. and Russian nuclear submarines in Caribbean for first time since Cold War's end. Yet strategic symbolism exceeded actual threat. Russia reasserted presence, demonstrated continued technical capability despite Ukraine war resource constraints. October 2025, Russia's Federation Council ratified military cooperation agreement with Cuba. May 2025, Moscow pledged $1 billion investment in Cuba's economy. Russian crude oil supplies provide Cuban lifeline. Russia sends submarines to signal great power status. China builds signal intelligence facilities for actual intelligence collection. Both approaches converge in Cuba. Both create contingency scenarios requiring U.S. planning. Scenario 1, rapid Chinese intelligence asset evacuation. Russian Lords precedent, 3AN-124 aircraft, 30 days, single facility. What needs extraction? CDAA systems, underground facility contents, intelligence databases, collection logs, communication archives. Even with multiple Y-20s, evacuation requires weeks, assuming Cuban airspace remains accessible. Maritime evacuation, vulnerable to U.S. naval interdiction. Transit, time 25 to 30 days. Prolonged deterioration potentially allows weeks. Scenario 2. Hostile U.S. facility seizure. Specialist teams needed. Signals, intelligence, exploitation, specialists. Communication, security analysts, damage assessment experts. Priority, targets, intelligence, databases. Preventing destruction, collection logs. Even hours of warning could allow demolition of most recoverable intelligence value. Helicopter-borne teams could reach multiple facilities near simultaneously from Guantanamo Bay. Scenario 3. Scorched Earth protocols. High explosives destroy antenna systems. Thermite, destruction of electronic equipment. With advanced warning, days, systematic dismantling. Chinese personnel evacuate portable materials. Destroy remain. Limited warning, hours. Focus on data destruction, demolition charges prepositioned on critical systems. Minimal warning, minutes. Emergency key destruction, small arms fire, into electronics, thermite grenades, on server rooms. Scenario for Cuban Missile Crisis 2.0. June 2024. Precedent. Kazan deployment demonstrated Russia's capacity to project nuclear platforms into U.S. waters. Kalibr and Onyx missiles possess optional nuclear warhead capability. U.S. military operations extending to Russian personnel at Cuban facilities could rapidly escalate armed confrontation. 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. 13 days at thermonuclear brink demonstrated how quickly surveillance, infrastructure disputes escalate to existential crises, variables that might not apply 2026. Maduro capture demonstrates Trump administration willingness to use military force for regime change. No clear communication protocol exists for facility seizure scenario. Chinese involvement adds third great power. What prevents escalation? Russian military limitations. Chinese calculations prioritizing avoiding confrontation, Trump administration ambiguity. What makes escalation more likely? Three great powers instead of bilateral framework. Compressed timeline, absence of clear negotiation framework. Cuba sits 90 miles south of Florida, commanding sight lines to major U.S. military concentrations. China cannot replicate Florida space launch telemetry collection from Chinese territory. China's assessment. Cuban access closes strategic gap in North American coverage. Intelligence value justifies political risk. Russia's assessment. Cuban presence demonstrates retained great power status. Symbolic value justifies limited economic support. Cuba's assessment. Hosting facilities provides regime survival support through economic assistance and diplomatic protection. Why escalation risks don't prevent facility expansion? Each power conducts cost-benefit analysis, concluding intelligence value exceeds risks. Lords operated 37 years without triggering U.S. military seizure. 2019 to 2025. Why surveillance infrastructure survives regime changes? Physical facilities represent sunk investment. Geographic advantage persists regardless of operator. Russia's Lord's reactivation 12 years after closure demonstrates even complete. Evacuation doesn't permanently eliminate surveillance presence. What contingency scenarios reveal? China's lack of heavy lift capacity exposes fundamental asymmetry. Chinese destruction protocols can deny intelligence value even if U.S. forces physically seize facilities. Presence of nuclear-capable submarines during crisis creates escalation pathways. This isn't about debating whether China should operate facilities 90 miles from Florida. It's about documenting how surveillance architecture that everyone knows produces escalatory risks keeps getting expanded by powers claiming strategic necessity. 3,000 to 8,000 mile signal tracking range. Coverage of approximately 20 Florida military installations. 37-year Lord's operation. 2002 evacuation. 12-year gap. 2014 reactivation. Chinese expansion as Project 141 template. The persistence puzzle answered, geographic advantage creates enduring collection value. Historical precedent normalizes risk. What makes 2026 different? Three great powers, compressed timeline, Cuban regime instability, absence of clear negotiation protocol. February 2026 status. Regime faces economic collapse. U.S. surged 11,000 troops. Chinese facilities remain operational but vulnerable. The Lord's Protocol. Race to secure or destroy surveillance infrastructure before it changes hands. By March or April 2026, we'll know whether regime survived, facilities underwent scorched earth destruction, or got seized. CSI satellite imagery. April 2025. Bejucal construction ongoing. El Salo. Infrastructure intact. The verdict. Surveillance architecture everyone knows produces escalatory risks, keeps getting expanded by powers claiming strategic necessity. Cuba became focal point where Cold War surveillance, post-Soviet intelligence collapse, and 21st century great power competition converge. Because 90 miles south of Florida remains optimal position for monitoring what happens 90 miles north, whether China evacuates U.S. seizes facilities or regime survives another crisis. The fundamental pattern remains. Surveillance infrastructure's persistence despite everyone acknowledging where it leads. The puzzle that doesn't get solved, only reset for the next cycle. It's February 2026. 4 signal intelligence facilities operational. Regime countdown continues. The race to secure China's spy base hasn't started yet, but the contingency timelines are already running. The technical specifications, the evacuation logistics, the facility seizure protocols, the nuclear escalation pathways. Those aren't speculation. They're documentation, and documentation is what this channel does.